about is what is a rectangle? What is a rectangle? Alice?
Polygon.
It is a polygon. What's a polygon?
Oh.
You do not have to write this down, you just need to be with me.
A polygon is a shape that has 3 or 4 corners.
Close. A polygon does have 3 or more corners. It can have a million corners if you wanted it to. Okay? Polygons could have lots and lots of corners. A polygon is something that is closed. So a closed shape or a closed figure is something that has an end point and a starting point. There are no openings. Okay, so just to reference, this is not a polygon because look, there's a giant hole in the middle. Okay, if I were to go like this, technically it could be a polygon under a closed shape. But what you need to know is that it's closed, it has corners, all that good stuff. Okay? What else is a rectangle? Or what else do we know about rectangles? I know you've been working with rectangles for a long time. Savannah, Savannah, what is a rectangle? It has 4 sides. I like it. We know it has 4 sides. No, I've already said that. Eleanor, what else is a rectangle?
It has 4 right corners.
4. Whoops. 4 right angles, 4 corners. Now I would like you to write what I'm about to write on the whiteboard down, just so that we're clear. Because you're going to need to know this. I know you've probably done it in math lab, but just to kind of make sure it's in our notebook. So an angle, for all intents and purposes, is just a corner. So if you hear angle, specifically it wants to measure the inside of a corner. Okay? So my arm, like this, my corner is here, my angle is the inside. Okay? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. If I hold my hands like this, the corner is the top, where it comes to a point up here, and the angle is the inside. But for you guys, as long as you know corners, angles are pretty much the same thing, that's good. Okay? Now a right angle is something special. Okay? You can have lots of different angles. Angles can be really big, they can be really small. A right angle is one that is exactly 90 degrees. So you measure angles using something called degrees, which doesn't sound like you would, because degrees is like temperature, right? Like it's 60 degrees outside. But it's a different form. It just has the same name. Okay? So a right angle are where they perfectly come together to make some version of an L. Okay? You should be writing this down. And a right angle could look like this. It could also look like this. Okay? That's still a right angle. It's some version of an L. An L is a right angle. Now, a lot of times, put your hand down please. A lot of times they'll give you a clue so that you know that it's a right angle, which is really helpful, James and Eva. Sometimes they'll give you a clue and they'll put a little box in the corner to say, hey, this is a right angle. No other angle will have that little box. So, where you have your drawing, I want you to write that box is a clue for a right angle. That little box is a clue, because a lot of times when you see an angle, if I was drawing like this funny angle, a curve. You don't need to know that, but I'm just telling you that that box is only found in right angles, so it's like a special clue for you to know what a right angle is. It's a corner, perfect edge, if you will. Kaylin?
You already know this, but
I'm aware of that. Okay, Eleanor.
there is a right angle. Is there like a left angle, an up angle, or a down angle?
There is not. It means right as in correct.
Oh.
But I appreciate what you're thinking. It doesn't really matter whether my angle is like this or like this. Neither are left angles or right angles. They're all still right angles. You're writing this, this, this. If I write it, you write it. Miss Savannah. They have 4 right angles or corners. I'm going to try my hand to draw one. But this board makes them look funny. Okay? Kinda. You can tell that they're at least attempting to be 90 degrees. You might have these little mini boxes in here. Okay? What else is a rectangle? Polygon, 4 sides, 4 right angles or corners. I'm happy with either language. Harley?
2 long sides and 2 short sides.
Always?
No.
Then let's not write that down. So Harley said it has 2 long sides and 2 short sides, and I said always, and she said maybe not always. I only want always. What's a rectangle? A rectangle is always a polygon. It's always going to have 4 sides, and it's always going to have 4 right angles. What else? What else?
Smaller.
Ashlyn?
It's a long box.
Always? Oh, that doesn't look very long. That looks really wide. Not always. Always. Haley?
It's quadrilateral.
It is always a quadrilateral, and we're going to talk about that word, and we're going to hear it a lot.
That's 2 L's.
No, I don't think so.
Oh.
But I will say quad is a root word, and quad means what, Kaden?
4.
Quad means 4. So a quadrilateral is definitely going to have to do with something to do with 4. We'll talk about that one a little later on. Aiden?
It's on the stretched out fingers.
Always? Maybe doesn't do it for me. Natalie?
Always has 2 sets of parallel lines.
Ooh, I'm glad you brought that vocab up. So it always does have 2 sets of parallel lines. And we're going to talk about parallel on this side of my worldview. Alright? Underneath where you've written this in your notebook, I want you to write parallel lines. I know for a fact Cassie has talked to you about this.
Yeah.
So that's alright, we're going to do it again. Just to make sure we're all on the same page. Parallel. Parallel lines. You need this in your notebook. They're very, very important to 3rd grade. Extra, extra, super important to 3rd grade. I guarantee 100% there is a geometry question on the EOG. It will have to do with parallel lines. Please know what parallel lines are. I cannot tell you that enough. Okay? What are parallel lines? What are they? I know that you've seen them and talked about them in math labs. What are parallel lines? James, what are parallel lines?
They're kind of like a line like these,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes like these. No, wait, not these. These.
Okay.
Like these lines, but two.
Can parallel lines touch?
No.
They can never, ever touch. The trick with parallel lines is that you have to imagine that they keep going. So for instance, if I had this line and this line, they're not touching, right? Those lines do not touch. However, if I imagine they keep going,
They would eventually.
they would touch. And so that's my trick for how I know that these lines aren't parallel. Yes, right now they're not touching, but if I imagine them to keep going, they're going to smash into each other. And that means that they're not parallel. Okay?
But
Please put this in your notebook because they're going to try and trick you with that. Those two black lines are not touching. No, they're not. They are not touching. But if I imagine them to keep going, to keep being lines and keep going down their path, they're going to smack into each other, and that's a problem. Savannah?
So with the boxes, if they put four little boxes in a rectangle, does that mean it's
90 plus 90 is 180. 180 plus 180 is 360. So the total amount of degrees inside the rectangle is 360.
So when they put one box in there, that means each corner is worth 90?
Yes.
So they
But you will never need to know that in 3rd grade. Well, you maybe need to know it when you get to 4th grade, 5th grade stuff. Some. But right now, I really just need you to know that this is code for 90 degrees, and that there are 90-degree angles in here. But let's get back to parallel. So this is a non-example. Those are not parallel. No, they're not touching when I drew them in black. However, if I imagine them to keep going, they're going to smack into each other. Okay? Parallel lines could look like this. They could be horizontal. These are a good example. That's what James gave me earlier. These are parallel lines. They could obviously be vertical. Vertical is going up and down. Okay. And my lines could go at an angle. These are still parallel, they're just going this way. So you could see them even going sideways. The trick is, if I imagine them going on forever and ever and ever, do they run into each other?
Yes.
Parallel lines should not. Okay, so you need to have these good examples and this bad example in your notebook. Okay, Harley.
Another clue or code is in the word parallel. Is the L's are parallel.
Sure. Good way to remember it. Caleb.
But couldn't they still be like the triangle one with the black line going like this? Couldn't they still be going at a right angle where they wouldn't touch each other?
A right angle is still going to run into each other.
No, what if they were like this and they went up? But what if it was a little over this?
If they touch, they're not parallel. I don't care how they touch.
Kind of like a triangle.
If they go and touch at any point, they are not parallel.
So if they're like that close to each other, they're not parallel?
They can be running this close to each other, but as long as they never ever touch, they're still parallel.
Oh, wow.
But if they touch at some point, game over. Okay? So we go. Yes.
Is it a sheet that has two sets of parallel?
The problem that Mateo is having is he's saying, hey, I have my rectangle, and you guys are telling me that it has two sets of parallel lines. But all my lines are touching, so I don't know how they're parallel. They're touching each other. And that's a great problem to have, because I guarantee most of you have thought about that. Okay? A set of parallel lines means two. So there are two sections where this is parallel. With your pencil, I want you to draw pencil, not a crayon or a color, regular old pencil. Draw a normal sized rectangle. There are lines on your paper probably for a reason. Okay? Alright, now Mateo's asking about the parallel lines. One set of parallel lines are here. If I only look at those green lines, and I'll do it on my board too. If I only look at my green lines, are those two lines parallel?
Yes.
Mateo, if I only look at the green lines, are those two lines parallel?
Yes.
Yes. So that is considered one set. With one color, I want you to highlight parallel lines. I did green on the outside. You can choose a different color, doesn't matter to me. Only one set. Okay. Now my other set is going to look a little different. If I only look at this color, Mateo, are those lines parallel? Only look at my orange on my board.
Yes.
Yes, and I'm going to do it not in orange. I'm going to do it, how about purple? Alright, if I only look at my purple lines here. Are the purple lines parallel?
Yes.
Yes. Now if I look at one green and one purple, are my one green and one purple parallel to each other?
No.
No, they run into each other. They run into each other right here on my corners. So those are not parallel. They run into each other. But my one set of green lines,
Do we color the other lines?
yep, you can color your other lines. And then with your crayon, whatever you did the first set in, I want you to write. So my green is my first set of parallel lines. And then whatever color you did your second set, write that in that color, which is now, for me, this is what it looks like. Purple is my second set. Does that help answer your question now?
Yes.
So do we see how there are parallel lines even though they're all touching? Yes. You need to become a master at spotting parallel lines. Okay? It's super hard when you have a shape and they're all touching. Where are the parallel lines? Well, if you color code them, they're easy to spot. But just looking at that shape, it's kind of hard. But I can tell you, in 3rd grade, you need to become a master at spotting these parallel lines. It will take some practice. I don't expect you to be a master today. But that's what we're doing in geometry this year. Becoming a master at spotting those parallel lines.
I'm already a master.
Great. Okay?
Yeah.
So Savannah said, what if my parallel lines are different lengths? What if I had this with this? Could those be parallel?
Yes.
What are my rules for parallel lines? What are my rules for parallel lines? Riley, what's one rule of a parallel line? They can never touch, even when I imagine them to go farther. If you imagine those lines keep going forever, would they touch?
No.
So are these two sets, this one set of parallel lines parallel?
Yes.
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 Alright, so we've made a good list on rectangles. Now this brings us up to something else. Another shape that we might not be as familiar with. What's a parallelogram? So this shape we're not as familiar with. It is a shape. We're not as familiar with a parallelogram, but we need to know what it is. So does anybody know what a parallelogram might have or might look like? What might be some requirements? Natalie?
Parallelogram is a shape that has two sets of parallel lines.
Yeah, the name is parallelogram. It definitely has two sets of parallel lines. It's called a parallelogram. Of course it's going to have parallel lines. Do you know what a parallelogram looks like? Do you want me to draw one?
Yeah.
That's a rhombus. It is not a rhombus. It is a parallelogram.
I knew that.
It is a parallelogram. All right, so what are some things that a parallelogram has? Now that we see one, what's something that they have? Not a trick question. You see it. Tell me what it has. Kate?
It has
Four sides. I like it. Four sides. Okay, put your crayons up. Since you're just coloring with them instead of doing math. What else does it have? Mitchell?
4 angles.
It has 4 angles. Does it have 4 right angles? No. Look, that does not look like a perfect L. That one does not look like a perfect L. We're looking for those perfect L shapes. So it has 4 angles or corners. That's totally correct. But it doesn't have that special right angle. What else does it have? Oh, Ada, what else does it have?
It has 2 sets of parallel.
Yep, it does have 2 sets of parallel lines. Harley?
The line are almost the same.
Always? Not always. Matthew?
2 things. Also a parallelogram can be a square, a rectangle, or a rhombus.
You're getting a little ahead of yourself. Hang on to that thought.
And the second thing is, I have a question about the rectangle.
Okay.
If it gets smaller and it looks like a square, is it still considered a rectangle?
Again, hang on to that thought. We'll get there. Ashlyn, parallelogram.
I think it only has 1 set of parallel lines.
No, we've already said it has 2 sets of parallel lines. We've already made that decision. Anything else? I can think of at least 2 more things. Please don't judge my poor drawing. It is a closed shape, even though I didn't draw it that way. What does that mean? It is a quadrilateral. What does that prefix quad mean? 4. Okay, it has 4 sides and 4 angles, and it's a quadrilateral. How weird is that? I can think of one more thing. It's a closed shape, even though I didn't draw it very well. A closed shape. What's another name for a closed shape? Peter?
4 sides.
Nope. Another name for a closed shape. Okay. 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 They're paying attention. You wonder. Bryce, what's another name for a closed shape? Remember? Haley, do you know what it is? A polygon. A polygon. Okay? How are those two shapes similar? What do they have in common? Rectangle and parallelogram. What do these two shapes have in common? What's something similar about them? They both have, Susanna? They both have what?
4 right angles.
Look at your parallelogram again. Let's look at our parallelogram. Does it have 4 right angles?
No.
No. Susanna, so they both have what's something that a rectangle and a parallelogram both have? Go ahead, Susanna.
2 parallel lines.
They both have 2 sets of parallel lines. Very good. What else do they have in common? What else do they have in common? Every time I look, you're facing the wrong direction. Get it together. Something that they both have in common. They both have what? Natalie, what do they both have?
They are both put under at least 2 of the same category.
Did we talk anything about that? What do they both have? I want literally 2 things that they share. They both have what, Bailey? They both are polygons. That's fine. Matthew, what do they both have?
4 angles.
They both have 4 angles. One of them has the special angles, but they both have angles. What do they both have? What do we both have? They both have 4 sides. Very good. If we wanted to be very fancy and say 4 sides in a fancy math way, we would just say that both shapes are, remember that big long word? You remember, Lily? That word is quadrilateral. That's a really big fancy math word that we can say in place of having 4 sides and 4 angles. Anything else? 2 sets of parallel lines, 4 sides, or quadrilateral, polygon, 4 angles. Eva?
4 corners.
It does have 4 corners. Angles and corners are, for the most part, the same thing for us. Ashlyn?
I can't remember. For the rectangle, they both have 2 sets of parallel lines.
Yep, we already have that. Jaden?
That they both are,
Okay, Matthew?
they're both a shape.
Yep, we already have that. Polygon? How are these shapes different? How are these shapes different? Are they different?
Yes. Everything. Kind of.
Alright, Mitchell, what's different about them?
One of them has right angles and the other one doesn't.
Which one?
The square, the rectangle has right angles and the parallelogram has no right angles.
say they have angles, they're just not that special right angle. Is there anything else that was different between the two? Anything else? They both are polygons, both are what we call quadrilaterals, which means they have 4 sides and 4 angles. They both have 2 sets of parallel lines. James, is there anything else you can think of that's different?
That they don't look the same.
And why would they not look the same? What is different of them?
Because they're different.
Yep. They don't look the same because one has right angles
And one does not.
Parallelogram just has regular angles, no right angles. Carla?
I can write mine down. Can you go back to the other page?
Down. Each shape has a specific set of rules that they have to follow in order to be categorized as that shape. In the geometry world, we call those rules attributes. Okay? They're really just rules, but in the math world, we call those attributes. Okay? You're going to see attributes a lot, so make sure you know what attributes are. A synonym for attributes is just rules. So again, each shape has a specific set of rules. We call those attributes that they have to follow to be categorized as that shape. We just made a whole list. You saw us make a whole list of attributes. That's what we did for a rectangle. And then we made the same list of attributes for a parallelogram. We're listing out the rules that that shape has to have. Some of these overlapping attributes can happen. For example, look, these all overlap. Both had 4 sides. Those rules overlap. Okay? Just like, for example, there are some rules in Dixon Elementary, but then there are some 3rd grade only rules. Does that make sense? So what might be a Dixon Elementary rule? Doesn't matter where you are, Dixon Elementary rule. No, you don't have to do this. A Dixon Elementary rule doesn't matter where you are. Jaden?
Catch the wave.
Catch the wave. Sure. You do not have to do this. Catch the wave for Dixon. Now, catch the wave would also go in both, because as a 3rd grader, you still have to catch the wave too. But in 3rd grade specifically, we, in this classroom, we have a rule of picking out new books for our reading buddies. Does everybody in the school do that? No. No. That's a 3rd grade only activity. You see how they still overlap?
Yeah.
School rule is catch the wave. 3rd grade rule is still. What is the 3rd grade rule? Catch the wave. 4th grade rule is catch the wave. Kindergarten rule is
Catch the wave.
You see how it doesn't really matter? They're still overlapping.
Yep.
Some attributes are going to do that. Write this sentence down. Some attributes are going to overlap. Just like your kindergarten brother has the same expectations as you do, even though he's in kindergarten and you're in 3rd grade. They still have to catch the wave. Some attributes will overlap. They're gonna overlap. Just like we learned about that rectangle has 4 sides. What else has 4 sides? A parallelogram. Those rules are overlapping. They both have the same rules. Okay?